Hey guys, who's been keeping track? Who's been keeping count at home? This is the 1000th video I have published on this channel. And we had to do something slightly out of the ordinary to observe or know that this is video number 1000. I didn't really know what to do. And the concept for this video is, we could cover two bases here. I'm going to talk about the top 10 dumbest / greatest things that have happened on this channel. If you guys, come on, what do you mean dumbest / greatest? Do you mean the greatest dumb things or the dumbest great things? Or what do you mean? You know, being on YouTube leads you to a lot of unexpected discussions, unexpected conflicts, unexpected issues. You end up adopting positions you thought you'd never adopt, publicly or privately, questioning things and coming up with answers to things you thought you wouldn't deal with. One example that just came to mind was I had this really surreal dialogue with a young Canadian woman who converted to Islam after she moved to Japan. So, you know, I didn't think of this channel as being an atheist channel or as a channel that would, you know, debate that sort of thing. I ended up, but this is the kind of really interesting, I don't know, social circle or political climate that being on YouTube draws you into. I discovered her channel back when I was studying Japanese. She has nothing to do with veganism, but she's someone who did videos about learning the Japanese language and living and working in Japan. Years later, she converted to Islam. I made some kind of commentary on that. She replied to me, etc., etc. It goes on. So in these weird and unexpected ways, these are the rewards. If you want to come on YouTube, if you're watching this video thinking, maybe I also would like to come on YouTube and have some of these incredibly dumb experiences that you've had after 1,000 videos, this is the kind of reward, is you get this kind of engagement with your audience, with other YouTubers, with this sort of thing. It takes your life in unexpected directions, especially politically. I'm someone who cares a lot about politics. I mean, we could also roll into this video, because it's not that long a story, to celebrate 1,000. I can finally give the answer to the question, when was the first time I heard of veganism, when I heard the word vegan for the first time, and how did I end up becoming vegan? And so I know Melissa has her own story on that. And I think they're both stories are only a couple sentences long, so I don't know if it needs to be its own video. So Melissa, before she became my girlfriend, she was a fan of the channel. You've seen almost every video on this channel. Out of 1,000 videos, you've maybe seen 899 or something. we don't know exactly. And I just mentioned some people complained when they look at my channel history from their web browser, they don't get the number 999. They don't see the same number of videos. This should now tip it into 1,000 that I get on my. I've put up a screenshot of that when I am in the YouTube uploading suite. It tells me how many videos I've uploaded, and I assume that's because some of the videos were blocked, some of them were censored, some of them were unlisted. I mean, in a couple cases, I took a video down. You know, I think a couple of the videos I did with Vegan Cheetah probably were taken off. You know, there are a couple things that came offline that used to be online, but a couple of videos got censored by YouTube. So I don't know, or you know, I don't know why, but for some reason, YouTube gives me, I think, the full and accurate number of everything I've uploaded, and you may only get what's visible from your region, or there's some other reason why other listings have the number a little bit lower. Few videos that have been taken off the list. So I'm going to give you here's number 1 on my top 10 list, and this will give you a sense. I'm not just interested in listing these off. I'm interested in chit chat about, I don't know, how these videos got made, how the conversation started, or what drew me into this. But for me, you know, the number one things that comes to my mind is I made a video titled "Your Cat Hates You," you know. And I can remember the whole process that led up to making that video. You know what I mean? I mean, look, when I started this channel, I thought this channel was going to be about politics of China. You know, I was enrolled as an Asian studies major. I was learning Chinese, came over to Victoria. I was in this whole crazy situation. And, you know, I really thought that this channel was not going to be about veganism, or not particularly. My veganism would come up once in a while. I knew from the very start there was actually a tension in recording the videos. And I remember one interview I did with another guy where he interviewed me. And I knew sooner or later, you know, my ethical position on pets was going to come out, was going to have to be set on camera, and I'd get a really negative reaction. I knew that was coming sooner or later with my audience. And if you've been plugged into veganism as a movement for just the past 5 years, things have really changed. I mean, I don't think it's like a situation where I won the debate on this issue, but it so happens that my view has become way more prevalent and way more common in the last 5 years. I think because there's been more rigorous thinking about what veganism is and how to move forward. But when I came on the scene, or even when I first started toying with veganism and vegetarianism, when I first got interested in these kinds of politics, which for me were through ecology, political ecology, the pet-centered narrative, the pet care paradigm was dominant in veganism, dominant in animal rights. And that line of thinking went, here's the standard for how we treat cats and dogs when they're our pets, and therefore this is how we should treat all animals. This should be the baseline, the moral baseline. They used to use that term all the time. And there were movements, I mean, I can say within veganism or within animal rights, where they wanted to pass laws, like a Bill of Rights for animals, that would basically guarantee cats free health care, free veterinary care for cats. So if some poor family has 100 cats or 15 cats or something, they don't have to worry about paying for it. People can just start amassing animals that have to worry about being responsible for their medical costs because the taxpayers will handle it. You can already guess how this might go horribly wrong, at least in our culture, you know. But that was really the dominant paradigm. And this crazy, you know, unforeseen sequence of political events led to my making a really tough, really, you know, pugnacious video on that titled "Your Cat Hates You." And the sequel was, unpredictably, "Your Dog Hates You." And I just looked it up. To date, those two videos together have reached over 10,000 viewers. Now, it's a small audience, but it's deep. I mean, for a video on that topic, it's such a narrow topic, for such a narrow audience, with such an unappealing title, such a, like, you know, it's real easy to get an audience if you tell people what they want to hear. You know, if you're out here, I see that even when I was buying groceries today. I was looking at the magazine rack, and like every magazine cover was just telling you something you already wanted to hear. You know, some of the magazines are about health and diet and lifestyle, but even the ones that are about politics or something, it's all affirming your sense of moral superiority or your own interest, that you're a good person. And, you know, this is a video that really came out and said, no, you think you're doing something morally positive by castrating and declawing a cat and treating it like a toy and keeping it in your apartment, and you're wrong. You know, this is really morally wrong, you know, inside veganism. So, yeah, for me, I mean, this is a kind of dumbest, greatest moment. And I can remember when it clicked. I think it was before I recorded the video. I just realized that's got to be the title. I've got to make a video where the title is "Your Cat Hates You." You know, it can't be a sophisticated statement about, I don't know, the wilderness versus domestication of animals. No, I need to take the clearest position possible on pet ownership. And now when I especially when I talk to younger vegans, you know, I'm really a guy like Ask Yourself, Isaac, on his channel. He comes from a totally different background from me, totally different framework, and he sees that as obvious, and he has this whole audience around him of younger people, and they're vegan, but they see pet ownership as deeply flawed in this way. So other people are figuring it out. They're taking their own paths to that kind of conclusion.
Yeah, so. I really liked those videos when they came out.
Yeah.
And, you know, or when I found them. I think after I had already watched your channel, I found them. But I felt like you were the only one that was talking about it in that way.
Yeah. I felt like that too. I felt all alone. Believe me. Go on. Yeah.
No, I still think generally it's more acceptable for vegans to have pets, or you know, that's seen in a more positive light,
right,
than not having pets. Just recently, somebody on the Vegans of Victoria Facebook group posted that they were about to move, and they posted a photo of themselves as a couple, and also their fur babies, their 2 dogs and a cat. They got so many positive responses. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna find a wonderful vegan family here." Like, great scene. Contrasting that to how your your introduction was received by that same group was kind of striking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think generally it's more normal still for vegans to have pets. But
well, and let's just throw it in, and to feed other dead animals to their pets, to feed dead cows to their pet cat. This is still the norm, and we still have those justifications, which are basically identical to the justifications meat eaters make for eating meat themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But, you know, with all these things, I mean, I think this video is going to be good, but I just, even if a topic is stupid, I feel like you don't cover it in a stupid way, you know.
Not everyone shares a perspective.
Like, you know, of course, it's the provocative title, you know, your cat hates you, your dog hates you, because people feel that their pets really do love them.
That's right.
I feel like this is this.
That's the big justification.
To a being that
I love them, they love me. Right.
Yeah, it is provocative, and you know, might be seen as just dumb YouTube content, but I think it is important philosophical conversation about it.
I think that's the sort of thing where it's so unwelcome and jarring for the people hearing it that they hear it now, and maybe they think about it a few months later. You know, it comes back to haunt them a few months later. But in terms of the audience who didn't want to hear that, you know, I mean, it's a very unwelcome challenge to their whole, you know, moral framework. And I did hear back from some of those people. There were people who really seriously devote a lot of their time to rescuing cats off the street, and where they feel that's their main form of vegan activism is rescuing and castrating feral animals, and then trying to housebreak them, trying to train them to pee in a box. That's what they're putting all their time into, and they call it vegan activism. So for them to stop and reflect from a different perspective, whoa, this might symbolize the very opposite of what veganism is supposed to be about. You know, and again, you know, it's one of those funny things. I mean, anyway, they wouldn't think that way about horses or something. You know, I mean, training a horse to pull a carriage or something, they wouldn't see that way. But yeah, they have all these kind of deep-seated justifications. So, I mean, in some ways the struggle continues, but I really do have the impression across the board that in terms of generational change within veganism, you know, you can look at the waves of different forms of vegan activism. After abolitionism kind of rose and fell, the next wave coming up, it does seem to me, is generally pretty harsh on the pet care assumptions, pet care model of veganism. Yeah. Okay, so number 2 on my list, really direct segue, was my assault on the Animal Sanctuary fundraiser from Joe Vegan. My harsh critique of his approach to that. So the final video in that series got over 9,000 views. Now again, if Onision is watching this or something, if some big YouTubers watch, they'll be laughing at these small number of views. But get real. This is within vegan activism. I mean, this is a subculture within a subculture within a subculture that you're speaking to with these kinds of videos. And when I started this channel, I thought I'd be talking about politics in China, where you have over 1 billion people who are concerned and interested and have a bigger audience. Didn't work out. No interest, basically zero interest in any videos I do about politics in China, which is, you know, surprising, but that's in some ways the way the internet works. But you know, Joe Vegan, there's a lot of emotional weight in that interaction between him and I. You know, for me, I think there is for him too, because I've chatted with him a little bit since then. You know, really like 15 seconds. You know, but you can see all this stuff had a big impact on him. Joe Vegan, you know, he talked to my ex-wife. He was involved in the Durian Rider drama. Some people have forgotten, or some people will have never known in the first place. His channel started off just being him and his wife talking about their lives, basically after they lost faith in Durian Rider. Really quickly, Joe Vegan was a guy who went to Thailand, rode his bike up Doi Sutap, deeply believed in, especially the ecological message Durian Rider was saying. He really believed in. This is an old slogan nobody remembers now: burn rubber, not fuel. You know, to commit to always riding a bicycle, never using a taxi, never using a car. He really wanted to live this way and got very passionate about it. And when he lost his faith in Durian Rider, he started just making videos talking about his life as a vegan. And at that point, I reached out to him and said, hey, I'd love to talk to you on my channel. There was no comedy, there was no drama, there was nothing, no other content on the channel. And this channel took a turning point. The first person he started doing impersonations of, or impressions of, he started doing comical impressions, was me. He started doing a comedy bit where he'd pretend to be me and he'd impersonate my voice and my cough and holding my microphone. And people went nuts for it. And then all the other voices he started doing, the other personalities, the first couple of videos. So there's a really weird situation. I remember talking to my Chinese teacher in China about it. I was like, oh, yeah, well, my channel is popular up to a certain extent. But there's this other channel that does parody videos about me. And the parodies are more popular than the videos they're making fun of. This briefly was a bit of a sensation. But again, you see, from the start of my channel, I knew that my position on animal sanctuaries was going to be a big deal, was going to be a big source of tension. I knew this was something I was going to have to present one way or another. in his case, I mean, he could have totally talked to me in terms of constructive criticism. But, I broke down the costs, how many thousands of dollars per year you're talking about to just keep one pig, one horse, etc. But, questioning the underlying ethical principles. Is this the way forward for veganism, etc.? So, and it was a very strange situation, both personally and politically. And in the end, again, tragically, I mean, I won. I'm sorry, Joe Vegan completely folded. He deleted his channel. He stopped being vegan. He lost faith in veganism. I mean, obviously that's not the way I wanted to win, but I won to a much greater extent than I could have possibly imagined. I thought instead he might just sheepishly admit that he really never did the math, that he never thought through how much it costs or what's involved in running an animal sanctuary. And frankly, what I would have liked to have heard from him is that he never thought it through from the animal's perspective. Because, this animal, sorry, very briefly, guys, but the animal sanctuary paradigm, the animal is living in a shed on a farm. It's still living on a farm. It's different in that there's no slaughterhouse at the end of their confinement, but they're still in a period of confinement. This is like the difference between, being on death row and just being in prison as a life sentence. It's a very, very strange thing that we're trying to glorify as morally positive. If you think that a pig shouldn't live its whole life in a wooden shed, if this doesn't make sense, having, castrated, domesticated animals living with hay in a shed and, exactly this situation, why does it suddenly make sense when we put the word sanctuary on it? So again, those are tough questions, and it came out again. This is kind of the top 10 dumbest things, but there was a dumb person-to-person, contest of egos, no doubt. I mean, there was a personal conflict.
Yeah, I mean, it seems dumb, but again, like, once you say it,
right,
you can't think about it in another way. Like, you can only think about how you're explaining. I mean, at least for me, because I do try to think, like, well, generally, like, people think that it's activism to go to a sanctuary and pet a pig.
Yep.
To pet a cow. They take photos of themselves and say,
yep,
I'm vegan for the animals.
Right.
Like, I'm compassionate. But that was when I was first going vegan. That's what I would see. I would think of it in those terms. But once I started realizing that it's basically the same thing as owning a pet,
right,
I saw there was no going back. I was like, oh, okay, well, it's
right,
as you say, like death row or living in a life sentence in jail.
But I mean, and we see all these problems with zoos. But when you just change the sign from zoo to sanctuary, when you don't charge admission, when you just ask for donations, what is the difference?
Yeah,
it's not a zoo; it's a sanctuary.
Yeah,
right, got it.
Anyway,
well, it's worse though, because a lot of zoos do, not all, but many zoos try to recreate their conditions in the wild.
Yeah.
Which for smaller creatures especially is possible. You can have an enclosure that simulates, a petting farm or a sanctuary. They don't even have that.
Yeah.
So, something else you want to say, Fawn?
No, I was just gonna say I didn't watch Joe Vegan's channel, so I'd only heard about it on your channel.
I know. He had a bald wig and everything. Yeah. He was always making jokes about how I allegedly worked for the CIA and this stuff. He was kind of riffing on the rumors about me and among some raw vegans and what have you. Yeah.
But yeah. I guess I would agree that was kind of a dumb situation.
Right.
Still some valuable information came out of it.
Well, I mean, the other one that's not even on this list, I mean, another channel, well, even Vegan Gains, I knew him back when his channel had like 400 viewers. Like I didn't know him personally. I wrote to him and he wrote back. We just had a little bit of email back and forth kind of thing. But right at the beginning of his channel when he had no significant audience. But the other one obviously was Vegan Cheetah, Charles Marlowe, where I knew him right at the beginning. I was in many ways a part of him rising from zero to a certain level where he was at when I knew him, he had fewer viewers than I did, And I saw him come up to this kind of short period of intense fame and then collapse. So Joe Vegan's another one of those guys where just kind of even though there's not so many years involved, where I saw the whole arc of their career. And, but I mean, of all of them, I mean, Joe Vegan's the one where I was probably the most emotionally invested. When I remember he made one particular video where he was saying stuff about my academic situation, about my situation at the university. And it really hurt me. I've told this to you before, so this is my girlfriend I'm talking to. I probably haven't told this to my YouTube audience before, but I'm way more psychologically damaged by my negative experience at university than basically anything else I can name. So, I mean, my girlfriend was with me when my father died. I was less upset by my father's death than you were, no shade, when you found a T-shirt that had the stitching coming apart in the laundry. The famous thing in the relationship we joke about. There was this one time she had a T-shirt she was especially fond of, and she took it out of the dryer, and it was coming apart. She was really upset about it. But yeah, I had complete equanimity. When my father died, when my various grandmothers died, what have you. But no, I mean, I really do carry a lot of pain from my ongoing struggle with the university system. I remember that really got to me. And Joe Vegan, he also was someone who knew me. I can't say we were friends, but I remember he sent me emails of appreciation about how meaningful my videos were for his life and changed his direction of life. So yeah, I was a little bit more involved there, than I am with some of these other channels that rise and fall. This is a good segue. The issue of being emotionally involved to number 3 on my list, the alcohol and caffeine video. So I just checked. The alcohol, it's basically against alcohol and caffeine. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Right. Oh, okay,
I shared that video with multiple people.
Okay. Yeah. So I was thinking maybe you didn't remember it. Sorry.
No. Yeah. I mean, before I had seen your channel, I had actually stopped drinking alcohol.
Right.
Just because, whatever. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I had stopped drinking alcohol. And I remember that was one of the first things in my first email to you. I was like, I've never heard somebody talk about alcohol, frankly, in this way to me, but it's it resonates with everything that I've heard from when I was growing up, learning in health class that it causes brain damage. Why is this so prevalent? Why do people do this? And
why are we making excuses for it? Right.
Just treat it like a social lubricant. And,
so again, just briefly, not to derail you, but I checked as of today, 22,000 views.
That's pretty good.
For a video on that topic. I mean, it's a huge audience. Yeah. It's basically like a 1-hour morality lecture with, some science and other types of material thrown in. Yeah. But I mean, it's not telling you what you want to hear. It's not telling you can lose weight, look great. There's no silver lining in the cloud. Right. It's
Yeah. Well, it was the same situation for me for caffeine too, but for unrelated reasons to what you were saying. I remember you were talking about how it affects your sleep. Yeah, for me that wasn't the issue, but just basic things that.
So still to this day, I get email from people, not that often, but once in a while, I get email from people telling me they quit drinking alcohol the day they saw that video.
That's great.
So now out of the 22,000 viewers, I don't know if that's 5 or 10 or 15 people or something, but that is really interesting. And again, I'd say like the Your Cat Hates You video. I think a lot of people probably saw that video, thought about it, maybe a few months later, or maybe a few years later, it kind of haunts you. Gee, my excuses or my reasons for drinking alcohol, they really don't make sense.
Yeah.
So I just say I think it probably has had that kind of creeping impact on a whole lot of people. Yeah. So again, look, I mean, not a role I ever thought I'd play. Not just... look, back when I was involved in Buddhism, if I become a Buddhist preacher or something, it absolutely was the role I thought I'd play in life. But that's a really interesting example of a video like that reaching its audience, or the audience finding the video. Who knows how that happens? But I don't know. I mean, on some level, this video, people felt they needed to hear, what the video had to say, even if they didn't want to hear it. So number 4, even more edgy in terms of the vegan, demimonde. My video is simply titled "Use Soap, You Idiots." Soap and hand washing. So if you're watching this video, you haven't been involved in vegan politics, but I mean, these are real questions. Do you make excuses for people or overlook the fact? Say, oh, this guy's a vegan. He wants to save the animals. He wants to save the planet. So it doesn't matter that he has these quote unquote natural hygiene views, and remember, someone like Unnatural Vegan, that used to be her view of the world. She used to believe that. She lost most of her teeth. She had a ton of cavities because she gave up using toothpaste. She had a period of time where she went for this, natural hygiene, pseudoscience. So if you're trying to cooperate and collaborate with other vegans, it's really easy to get into a mindset of making excuses. Oh, well, he's a little eccentric, or, this kind of thing. But again, that was a video kind of coming down hard on the fact that no, it really matters. And there's a very strange kind of hypocrisy involved. I could go on about this all day. There's a really weird kind of white privilege involved It's just like, you live a life where you think this doesn't matter, you think you can get away with it because you don't have really horrible, immediately visible diseases like we have in the tropics that, that come from not washing your hands. I've talked to vegans face-to-face about this. There's one... So again, see, this is part of the thing that's interesting to reflect on is why did I make that video? What was the background of this video? Might as well tell the story. I don't think I've ever told the story before. When I was in Taiwan, after I divorced my wife and before I moved to this part of Canada, I met a vegan, a white European vegan guy, and he was telling me proudly that he doesn't use any soap of any kind, and so on. And, look, I was not as calm and cool about it as telling the story may suggest. But, I asked him, I said, when you go to the hospital, does it bother you if the doctor hasn't washed his hands? Does it bother you if they perform surgery and they say, no, we didn't clean the knife. We don't use soap. Because he wouldn't wash his, he wouldn't even wash his forks and knives. He wouldn't wash his plates with soap. He didn't use soap, at all, So again, that's, in my mind, that was the leap to, the surgeon's scalpel from the forks and knives you eat your food with. And, I remember he was shocked at the question because I'll tell a little bit more of the story. He said some words to the effect that he was sure, it didn't matter to have bacteria on his fingers. He did his own gardening too, so he gardened, fruits and vegetables on. And I said straight to his face, this is face to face IRL. This wasn't Skype or anything. We were in the same place at the same time. I said to him, "So you're telling me you come in after planting mangoes in your garden, and you put your fingers inside your wife's vagina without using soap and water? That's what you're telling me. You don't think there's any problem with that? Like you don't see the hygienic problem with that?" He was shocked. But I think I won the argument. He was shocked, but he had never thought about it before. And I think low key there was an element of, wow, you're right. And then the other thing was, I said before I wasn't that calm. This stuff, I'm saying I was calm during it. But what really made me angry, really made me livid, really got to me emotionally was he said, like many white hippies or white Westerners, he had been on vacation in India. And he said, oh, no, out in the small towns in India, quote, nobody uses soap and they're all perfectly healthy and fine and nobody gets sick. And to me, I've dealt with that in Laos, I've dealt with that in Cambodia, and, it really infuriated me. And I said to him, have you looked at the government of India statistics for how many people die of diarrhea, of waterborne illnesses, of foodborne illnesses, of illnesses that can be prevented or averted by washing your hands? Have you looked up those numbers? You're telling me nobody dies. Why not just say nobody dies of snake bites in India? Do you want to see the number for how many people die of snake bites? You think washing your hands doesn't matter? You think those people don't need soap? Why? Because again, there's this weird role of white privilege. So that was really where I lost my cool with this guy. Was his claim that everyone in India is fine. Anyway. So yeah, that was part of the background of that. And anyone who's been involved with humanitarian work, I specifically did health sector research. Within the United States of America too, and I've even seen this in American movies about it. The big justification. There's the separate but equal was one justification for inequality. But the other one that's deeper and broader was they have their own way of doing things. Don't worry that black people or Hispanic people can't access the medical care system or can't access the school system. One of the deepest justifications was they have their own way of doing things. You can imagine within Canada, First Nations people, the Cree, the Ojibwe, the Dene, they can't access the same services white people do or whatever. Well, don't worry. They have their own way of doing things. It's the coldest form of dismissive, racist death sentence you're passing on people. And for him, from his perspective, it's the opposite. In his mind, it's wrapped up with compassion and all these good things, all these positive sentiments, right? So yeah, that's for me is kind of the emotional and intellectual background to that video. That just considering what a totally unwelcome, divisive, polarizing message it is for me. So reached, I think it reached a pretty large audience. It reached as many people as we could hope for it to reach.
Yeah, For sure. I mean, I know that topic is pretty important to you, so I'm surprised you weren't more mad at other people. Like, that the main thing that made you mad was the humanitarian thing, just because, I've noticed that since we've gotten together, you're really meticulous about, hand washing, which is great. It's great, but I think just like I understand why you made that video because it's ridiculous. I mean, my mom's a nurse, so coming from that background, I was
the value of hand soap. Wasn't it?
Yeah, washing your hands.
There was another situation.
And nurses actually have like
special brush and technique.
Appropriately wash your hands. You should wash your hands for like 20 minutes. Like 20 seconds. Sorry. Anyway, okay, 20 seconds. But
babe, a story I never told you, never came up on YouTube either. When I was in Laos doing humanitarian work, there was a guy there, and he was the second time I bumped into him, he was with his daughter. So I think he had his wife and daughter with him. And I recall he was Italian, so he was a white European tourist, and he had done a little bit of humanitarian work. And he met me, and we were speaking in English. He had an Italian accent, but he spoke English very well. And he said, "What?" He said, "Oh, so what kind of humanitarian work are you doing?" I said, "Well, we work in food security, which means helping people not starve because there are food shortages and there's malnutrition and starvation here." And this guy laughed. He laughed in such a self-confident manner, and he said, "It's completely ridiculous." He claimed nobody in Laos would be starving. This is a myth and a fiction created by Western powers to justify intervention. And it's like, apart from the fact that I know this on paper, I know textbook statistics about malnutrition, and we still had diseases in northern Laos. You can go blind from lack of certain fat soluble vitamins and things. Like vitamin deficiency leads to lifelong blindness and these kinds of things. We still had some of those kind of medieval diseases. You had another condition where your fingers don't form properly and stuff. We had a lot of illnesses that have disappeared from most of the modern world, which ultimately caused by vitamin deficiencies and so on. And we had malnutrition of the simplest kind, people just not having enough calories, not having enough protein and stuff. And I was involved in trying to do something to help and so on. And here's this guy laughing at it. And I don't just know it on paper, I know the face-to-face reality of it. And, at the time when he said that to me, I did, you can imagine, I did try to, in a very rational way, talk through, the statistics and what the facts are. No, seasonal malnutrition is real, starvation is real, and actually, that's right. The other thing that I said to him at that time was that I knew this percentage. I knew what percentage of people were malnourished in that province in Laos. Mm-hmm. I knew stats like that off the top of my head at that time. I quoted him those stats, and I pointed out to him, I said, you're saying they have unlimited food provided by the jungle. Have you ever actually sat down and done an estimate how many thousand people can live off of mushrooms and, berries scavenged from the jungle? That could a huge area of jungle, if you're just talking about scavenging, not farming, bits and pieces gathered this way. It can support a very small human population, but not thousands of people, not millions of people. It's ridiculous. So I remember talking that stuff through with him rationally. And then the second time I met him, this is a village in Laos. It's a small town. Not a village, small town. And, so for some distance across the way, he laughingly mocked me. And he said, "There's the man who's going to save 32% of people from starvation, like with his bullshit, humanitarian project." And, I can tell you honestly, if his daughter wasn't standing right there next to him, I would have beaten the crap out of that guy on the street in the middle of that town in Laos, and nobody would have stopped me. And maybe the local Communist Party apparatus would come around. Well, these things happen. So yeah, there's a certain kind of, but I didn't. I mean, his daughter and his wife were there, and it's like, well, there are a lot of ignorant people in the world.
Yeah, but again, it's just something that's so simple.
Right.
So I get why this is made your list. It's so stupid. It's just so self-evident when you are from the Western world.
But it's also the person I'm talking to is wrong, and they're morally self-righteous about it. Yeah, they think they're the one on a moral crusade. Yeah. They're the person who's against hand soap. The person who thinks starvation isn't a problem.
They're saying nobody should use soap.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Gee, what a shame that surgeons are washing their hands. Boy, yeah. You know. So yeah, I mean, you know. But anyway, this is the darker side of my psychology. You guys are getting to hear about in this video. I got 2 notes here on my top 10 list for weeping on camera. I asked Theo if he had Theo is one of my super fans, supporters on Patreon. I asked Theo if he had a list of all the videos in which I've broken down weeping on camera. I don't think he does. Several times I've broken down weeping on camera. That was something I imagined I'd do on this channel when I first started. It always seemed to me, you know, if you're keeping it real, if you're really keeping it real, I think you're gonna. And you're talking about things that are worth weeping about. I think you're gonna weep on camera. First time ever. There was a hilarious reaction from Dom Bauer. Dom Bauer is a small but well-known YouTube channel where he played the clip where I just start to weep. And he sits there saying in his Scottish accent, he says, "This is a grown man. This is a grown man. Tough as nails. He can do 200 push-ups. He's done humanitarian work. He's been all over. This is a grown man weeping over the death of a chicken." You know, which it was. It was describing chickens dying in particular circumstance when I was doing humanitarian work in Laos. And that video, it's still a great video. It's a very, very long video. Me talking to Zaria269. Zaria is no longer on YouTube. To my knowledge, she's no longer a vegan activist.
I do remember that now.
Yeah. But to me, at that time, I remember after we wrapped the video, after I stopped recording, I was sitting there, I was like, this is the best video ever on my channel. This is the best video on vegan YouTube. This is amazing. I just thought it covered a lot of really meaningful ground. Yeah. The Agony of Activism is the title of that video.
Yeah.
We can put links.
I remember that, yeah.
Right. And the number 2 thing in terms of weeping on camera, the single most viewed video on my channel of all time was when I broke down weeping, you know, talking to Durian Rider. Sorry, talking about Durian Rider,
right,
in response to his allegations against me.
In the Chiang Mai apartment.
Yep. And, you know, so one thing some people don't pick up on in terms of why that was so emotionally intense, you know, I was jet lagged. I got up after a nap. I sat down to do that video. And, I mean, okay, look, in terms of the background of this, there's a lot I could say that's kind of interesting and has never been said before. Had this conflict with Durian Rider. And up to that point, there were really kind of there was a fork in the road. There were two different tactics I could take with it. And it's like, well, either I'm going to commit to, you know, really keeping it real this way, or I'm going to act like it's no big deal and it doesn't bother me. You know, I'm going to kind of dismiss it that way. And, you know, on that other road, the pretending that it's no big deal, there were other ways to seek redress or settle the score between us. You know, put it that way. Off camera, you could make it clear to him just what a big deal it is. But it's like, okay, either I do it this way and we're doing things man to man, face to face, or I'm going to be really real with the audience. I'm going to do it this way, and we're going to make a legal issue of this. We're going to, you know, press the case. We're going to actually ask for donations. We're going to get a lawyer and do this properly. So there were, you know, different, you know, thought went into that. And you know the path I chose. So I kind of made that decision. I get up from this nap, and I really am trying to be, you know, pour my heart out, just be emotionally, you know, real and vulnerable, talking about this ridiculous situation. And the electricity is flickering on and off. At least once in that video, you can see that, where the lights briefly go out. But as I recall, so, you know, I didn't have a laptop then. My computer also blacked out for half a second and then came. So you're pouring out your heart, and like I know, like, if the power cuts and this video is lost, I'm never going to be able to do this again. Like, it's not going to be the same. No. You know, there's no take two for this. It's, you know, look, you know, my daughter and my divorce and my child custody case and my employment and, you know, all the impacts that's happening on my life. So that was really part of the background to it. But also emotionally, it was like, okay, this is the commitment to doing this all above board, to not settling anything off camera. We're going to do this in a publicly accountable way. We're going to, you know, do it on the books. We're going to, you know, get a lawyer and do things properly. In terms of the future of the vegan movement, I'm sure I made, you know, the right decision. Yeah. But, you know, the other path was to basically be snide and insincere on camera and get even off camera. And I think that's what most people either would have done or would have fronted like they were going to do. But for me, that was a very, very cerebral decision. So, I mean, I've mentioned to you, too, so after that wrapped, after I left Chiang Mai, I was then living in Kunming. Mm-hmm. Doreen Ryder was still living back and forth between Chiang Mai and Vientiane, which is the capital city of Laos. So, I mean, there was nowhere easier for me to hunt him down and confront him. There was nowhere easier, to be blunt, for me to get away with confronting Doreen Ryder face-to-face than the capital city. I still speak Laotian. I know how to cross that border by bus. I know how to cross that border and not have my passport stamped. Mm-hmm. I can be in and out of there, and I can find you. And, you know, there are no civil authorities that will save you as a tourist in Laos. Yeah. There's nothing, or me neither. You know, sorry, I mean, Laos is still the wild east, you know. So, you know, there was that temptation there. It's like, well, you know, but like I've said before, I said under that heading, I'll say again now, you know, I'm not a tough guy. I just happen to be tougher than these guys. And, you know, in terms of my own sense of justice, I think there are very, very few justifications for that kind of, that kind of resolution to a situation. So I did it the way I did it, with all the disappointments that then entailed in terms of the Thai legal system, the lawyers, and everything else.
Do you have any other videos where you remembered weeping on camera?
Yeah. I wept several other times. Yeah.
Because I know the one we recorded together about antinatalism.
Oh yeah, did I weep in one of those?
Yeah,
okay,
talking about what you would have done if you had been alive in World War II.
Oh wow, really? Okay, yeah. Yeah, there are several others. Yeah. There was one that was just a question from a viewer, a question from a Patreon supporter. Boy, I'm really but something about, you know, dignity and hope and politics, and I broke down weeping. And yeah. But all meaningful stuff. I don't regret any of it. I'm not weeping for no reason. Not weeping because my diet and weight loss didn't work out or some shit. I mean, sorry, but this is what you see on YouTube. You know, no. Yeah.
Most definitely.
I'm happy to have immortalized those moments to the world. And you know, if you can't, look, I've said many times here on YouTube, honesty is the only currency we've got. So. Okay, so look, maybe this is partly under the dumb, partly under the great heading. There was also, next number on my list here, the confrontation with Ryan from Happy Healthy Vegan. So Ryan is the host of Happy Healthy Vegan. I was just going to say a few words about that in terms of what built up that situation. And I don't know, sorry, I don't have the number written down. Several thousand people ended up seeing. The main video that spun out of that was titled Stop Treating
Women Like Infants?
Yes, Stop Treating Women Like Infants. You know, so that was the crux of the thing. But, you know, it was a really weird, the situation for that conflict was Ryan was live streaming. And everyone in the audience was saying, oh, wow, Isel's here. You know, Ryan talked to Isel. So everyone, obviously, everyone doesn't mean everyone. Many, many people in the typewritten comments were saying I was there. A lot of people were happy to see me and excited and saying, oh, wow, Ryan should talk to Isel. This is great. So apart from the fact that I made a few comments, he very much knew I was there. And he knew I was in the queue of guests to wait and talk to him. And I think for 30 minutes or something, he pretended I wasn't there. He had this paper thing. Nobody was buying it, like as if he just didn't see me in the queue. And he actually said things like, "Oh, let's see who else is here in the list of guests." You know. And he said, so there was really a lot of shade, and other people noticed the audience and pointed out, like, "Come on, Ryan, you're avoiding, you're avoiding dealing with Isel here." So when he finally did acknowledge I was there, which was unexpected, I thought, oh, maybe he'll just do this and then wrap it up. It's fine. He brought me on, and, you know, I did really at first try to be conciliatory and positive with him. I talked about the one thing I thought we had in common, which was Buddhism. I was like, well, you know, Ryan, you may not know this about me, but, you know, I was a scholar of Buddhism for more than 10 years. I actually know a lot about the religion and so on, and I asked him about his own practice and faith and what his involvement with the religion is. Now, his reply was, predictably, complete bullshit. I mean, Ryan knows less about Buddhism than I know about Star Trek. He's not a part of any temple or any tradition. He never has been. He has no connection to the Buddhist faith. I mean, he has less connection to Buddhism than I have to Star Trek. And I don't get why. I mean, people don't seem to do that with Islam. People don't just casually tell you they're Muslim when they haven't read the Quran, when they've never joined a temple or never been to a sermon, or they don't go to prayer several times a day and so on. I mean, there are some standards, but Ryan is indeed, you know, one of those dudes. And I know, I mean, later, what he said of me, you know, behind my back when I wasn't there, I know he denounced me later in saying that I'm not a real Buddhist. That, you know, I don't have the traits of being a real Buddhist. And it's, you know, I identify as a nihilist. But I mean, that kind of thing, it's off. I mean, even when other Jews say about me that I'm not a Jew and so on, I know the sense in which they mean it. When they're really dehumanizing you that way, saying, well, you know, here, you know, you're it's not that you're subhuman, but you're sub-Buddhist. You know, you're beneath this pale. So there was actually a lot of kind of content to that part, the setup of the confrontation, and frankly, I think it's still there. And why it's worth talking about, I think that's the fissure between the kind of hippie, yoga mat, rock crystal worshipping side of veganism and everybody else. I think there are. I mean, you can wrap up anything in the name of compassion. You know, you can say, oh, in my compassionate way, I'm denigrating you for not being Buddhist enough, or whatever it is. I mean, you can wrap up anything in that. You can wrap up, you know, what I thought was basically a misogynist position. It was a ridiculous thing. These are 27-year-old women or something, and you're dismissing what they have to say. You're dismissing and defending what they have to say as being just young girls and so on. You know, when he misrepresented what I said in my video, and his video reached a much larger audience than mine. So, I mean, it was damaging in its way. But for me, the other interesting issue is how, you know, how we're actually criticizing and addressing women. Would you talk about a 27-year-old man the way you're talking about a 27-year-old woman? No, you wouldn't. You know, those to me are really worthwhile topics to discuss. Yeah. But also in this case, the surrounding scenario that led to this genuinely dumb confrontation between me and Ryan, it's a stupid video. It's on the greatest, dumbest list. You know, I think that's something a lot of vegans are going to go through. Because if you're trying to put a movement together, and a lot of the people have yoga mats and have a salt lamp, that's the current fashionable crystal, and are practicing visualizing manifestations of all this crap. There's this whole kind of pseudo-religion that, you know, to some extent is infesting veganism in 2018. Yeah, this kind of confrontation is inevitable. Maybe if you guys watch that old video of me confronting Ryan, you'll feel some of that vibe too. This line you can relate to that too.
Was there anything before that between you two, or that was the first time you had talked to him?
The short answer is no, but I mean the long answer is, you know, he knew Durian Ryder, and everyone was leaning on him to take a position on that controversy, and you know, he exactly was one of these people who tried to get famous riding on the coattails of whoever there was to ride on, you know, including Durian Ryder. And he finally made this really wimpy video saying, well, look, man, just because I've been in a few videos with Durian Ryder doesn't mean I really like him or support him. And, you know, he made this really strange, evasive video. There was a contrast to what a natural vegan had already done, what Vegan Gates had already done, and so on. So I think that was part of the background to it for him definitely. Okay, maybe the dumbest video on my channel of all time, but totally sincere and totally real. Because, you know, my conflict with Ryan in some ways is pretty insincere and pretty unreal. Totally sincere and totally real. Ted Carr, worst human being ever. Yeah. So that is the first and I think only video to have been banned from my channel for bullying. My rousing denunciation of Ted Carr. If you search, the video was re-edited. I did censor it, a few little bits. Whatever I could find that was bullying, I did actually delete. So a few comments about his appearance were censored out of that. But, you know, that was a really sincere video. And so it's now up as 3 or 4 shorter videos, but that do basically cover the same content. But that was, you know, that was me sitting there on the microphone. And, you know, I don't know. I think all of us can relate to Ted Carr. It's easy to imagine the decisions he's made in life. You know? No, I don't know. I mean, you know. So look, I'll relate this back even to what I just said about Ryan. Oh, and I can relate this also to. I met one of the fans of the channel face to face by complete chance here. 20-year-old guy from Toronto, but he was here visiting Victoria. He met me. He met me in a vegan restaurant while he was watching videos from my channel about veganism. He was like, oh, you know, that's him. So he was a little bit freaked out to meet me under those circumstances. But, you know, when he told me he was 20 years old and he was talking about the decisions he was making about university in his life, I said, yeah, it's hard being 20 years old. When you're 20 years old, you're just old enough that nobody's making excuses for you anymore. And, you know, part of the problem with what Ryan was doing in relation to these female YouTubers he's making excuses for is you may think you're helping people by saying to someone who's 26, 27 years old, oh, you're still young. Like, don't worry about it. You don't have to take life seriously. You don't have to worry about the consequences of your decisions. You don't have to worry. Don't worry. You can, nothing matters. Trivializing your whole existence because, you're still young. I think it's a sickness in our society that, especially for women, that seems to not end. Until when? Until 29 and a half? When do we stop making excuses for women that way? When do we stop making excuses for young men that way? When do we stop inviting people to make those kinds of excuses for themselves? And yeah, I mean, Ted Carr, Canadian guy, I just really genuinely reacted to. It's in one way, it's similar to what Durin Rider, was saying. What I was really reacting to was him saying, you don't need to have an education, you don't need to have ambitions. You don't need to try to make a positive difference in the world. You don't have to take anything seriously. You should just live for self-indulgence. You should just live for your own happiness. So I have a really dumb, but really sincerely, kind of angry set of videos, denouncing him that I don't regret at all. But yeah, I guess aside of my character, you don't see that often on the channel. Is there anything you want to add to the list, babe? I have one more thing on the list, but it's a bit of a downer. Wow.
The vegan Ava video.
Wow. Yep.
Where we talk about her shirt that says "How to Get Ass."
Vegan Ava, how to get ass, right? Yeah. So you saw that stuff before you ever met me or thought you'd ever meet me. Did that make you think I was an idiot or no?
No.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the stuff with Corey McCarthy.
That was the last thing on my list, right? Yeah. No, but so I mean, I'm Corey McCarthy and the whole anti-racism thing. I just say I never thought I'd have that kind of content on my channel. It might come up in passing on my channel, but the day I made the first video laying into Corey McCarthy, which is still one of my most watched videos, one of the most influential videos, one of the biggest deal videos on the channel. It's had a huge impact in a lot of ways, despite the fact that this is, again, like a subculture within a subculture within a subculture. It's a really small, subsection of a potential audience for it. I sent an email to a number of vegan YouTubers, definitely including Privileged Vegan. Marnie is her name? Maureen, sorry. Definitely including Maureen as a recipient. And basically said to them, look, whoever it was, you say, your channel's about racism and anti-racism. Why aren't you tackling, this kind of issue, this kind of big issue within vegan YouTube, within the demimonde? This is a huge issue. Nobody's tackling it. So, I wrote that positively, and I sent them the links to the video saying, look, I really think somebody needs to tackle this issue. And then I sat there 5 seconds after sending the email, and I realized if I don't do it, nobody is going to do it. And still to this day, I'm right. Nobody did it. I mean, nobody else stood up and took on Corey McCarthy, Tara McCarthy. It's not within veganism. Now, one other thing about that's really interesting and memorable to me. They had a video on their channel. A few people may remember this. I forget if this was in the title, but one of the main issues in the video was, what is the difference between the far left and the far right sort of thing? What is the difference between leftists and whatever version of right wing they identify themselves with? And what they insisted on was the difference was that they had honesty and courage and integrity, right? That they really felt this was the difference. They didn't lie about what they really thought and really felt and so on. This is a common thing in politics, right? Where you think, they're racist, and they're basically saying the other side is really secretly, inwardly shares their views. They just won't admit it because they're a bunch of hypocrites, or they're too weak. They lack the courage or honesty or integrity to say the things that they say openly about racism, racial inequality, and what have you. So that's pretty common. But immediately after I posted my first video criticizing Corey McCarthy, in which it doesn't even really contain criticism. It's just presenting quotations of him and Tara McCarthy stating their position and there's an intro, and there's not a lot of commentary analysis there. I pretty much say, look, I don't have to refute any of this. It all kind of refutes itself. Here's what he has to say about, history of colonialism, genocide, racism, and what have you. Immediately after that first video, almost their entire channel, they deleted the videos. The videos disappeared, including that one. The video of Tara McCarthy sitting with the census map, census data for the United States of where black people, white people lived. And she was explaining to the camera that she was going to choose where she'd live based on these racist criteria, looking at a map. And anyway, it was ridiculous. Of course, every place worth living in America is, cosmopolitan and as ethnic mixing. The places that are white only are these really awful redneck backwoods parts of America that are economically dying and where nobody wants to live. So, it was funny looking at that map. I was like, are you really going to live up to this? You sure you wouldn't rather live in New York City or something? Anyway, so they handled this really overt racist material, and they suddenly deleted it all. And then there was another wave that rose and fell where they started uploading. So they were silent for a while. They started uploading racist material, and then again covered their tracks and deleted it and denied it and so on. So that for me was also a strange thing. It showed the impact that I had. They made a response video, and then they deleted it almost immediately, responding to me. I've seen them react in different ways. Yeah. But yeah, whether you think it's stupid or not, and whether you think this engaging in this kind of discourse is a waste of time or not. And again, I bring this back to the very first example that I got into a debate about Islam with a young woman who converted to Islam. Not a conversation I thought I'd ever have, but once you're in YouTube, once you're in the demimonde, you can see the sort of social function it serves. That, okay, this is going to mean something to a couple hundred people, which is, let's face it, a lot more meaningful than going to an academic conference and presenting an academic paper to maybe 20 or 30 people who don't really want to be there, don't really want to hear it. The fact that, this is meaningful, even if it's to 100 people, that is, that's a motivation to deal with these things. And also that motivation of, hey, I've really got something to say. This is something I'm passionate about, something I know about. This is something I feel I can share my 2 cents on. Yeah. Okay. So we're coming up on 1 hour. I think to keep it short, babe, I will just do my first time. No, let's look, yours is so short. Let's do yours too. No?
We can do it on a separate video.
Separate video? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so that's a wrap. 1,000 videos. Okay, you coming on camera?
1,000 videos! Yay! Congratulations!
1,000 videos, and we can do a really subtle reveal. Something that's never been mentioned on YouTube before. We're recording videos now in exactly the same room in Canada, where I probably recorded like 300 or 400 of the early videos. This is the exact same apartment I used to live in. And that over there, that is the same wall, what you see there, that is the same wall where I used to have the poster.
And we left the poster in Mongshan.
That was just what I was going to say. That was just what I was going to say. We didn't even forget. We filmed so many videos in front of that same poster, this blue poster that says Citizen 4. And it's a portrait of an American political dissident on the poster. I had that poster up for hundreds and hundreds of videos. I took it with me from Canada to China. I hung it on the wall of my school when I was learning Chinese in China, right? Yeah. Went through all these phases, got rolled up, it got a little bit ripped up, took it to Mongsha and so on. But when we packed up to leave Mongsha, we didn't even notice it. We'd gotten so used to seeing it there on the wall. So it remained up on the wall for the next person who moved into that apartment when we left. But this is the same room, the same shower and the same kitchen. New carpeting, new paint job, new deck, a few other things. Yeah, if you still count as new. But yeah. But yeah, so this actual room where I filled so many of those videos is a really strange continuity in my life, even though obviously every single piece of furniture in here has changed. Every other single little thing is different. And indeed, those who can really remember back on this channel will remember the video where I was ripening bananas in the sun. I had bananas on my my laundry drying rack. Laundry drying rack. Yeah. That was one of the earliest videos on this channel. And this is still the same. This is the same. Well, it's not the same laundry drying rack. It's still the same porch, and we still do sometimes put out our bananas together. So yeah, there you go. Plot twist. Thanks for tuning in, guys.